I'm recording. I'm going to count to 3 and then we're going to clap. 1, 2, 3.
Only 18 minutes of technical difficulties here in Delaware. It wasn't even toddler related.
Laura, do you have any opinions on barbers?
Well, they're expensive.
How many hours of training do you think a barber should have in order to be a barber?
Ooh, that's a good question. I feel like you need a decent apprenticeship period. It's one of those things where if you make a mistake, it could have that could seriously affect someone. You can't undo that very easily.
Like their hair? Because it grows back.
Well, I mean, so the reason we ask is, or the reason I ask is apparently Ajit Pai, for some weird reason, wrote an op-ed advocating against these licensure requirements.
Advocating against licensure of barbers.
And florists.
And florists.
And tour guides.
Here's the thing about florists, right? It doesn't matter how good your florist is. Like, every rose has its thorns. Like, who cares how well licensed your florist is?
Well, I mean, for a florist, like, if I'm just going to go get a bouquet of flowers, I can walk into the store and look around, and if I don't like it, then I've lost 15 seconds of my life, and I can just walk right back out. Maybe the licensure is more like if you're advance ordering flowers for a wedding or a funeral, you kind of want that certification assurance that you've got a reliable florist. Because you can't, that's like a haircut, you can't redo that. You don't get a do-over on your wedding if the flowers are bad.
Well, I mean, I think there are legitimate reasons to have licensures of barbers and I guess hair designers or whatnot that are beyond, bad haircuts, right? Like the spreading of disease, the just general cleanliness and hygiene issues.
Oh, that's right. That's
with...
that's the main thing, right? Is the little cup of sanitizing fluid they have to put the razor blades and combs and things into. Do they know what they're doing with that? That's like tattoo parlors, right? We all agree that a tattoo parlor should have a licensed technician who's had all sorts of health and safety training.
I always wonder if the fluid tastes good with the combs.
I've never
Probably
wondered
not.
that.
But it's like bright blue. It looks like it's coconut flavored.
Like Powerade.
Why would you think coconut flavor is bright blue? Like what gives you that impression?
You know how like red candy tastes a little bit like cherry, but it mostly tastes like red?
But
like
coconuts aren't blue.
Red is a flavor, right? Like Swedish Fish tastes like red candy. It doesn't really taste like cherry or strawberry.
Coconut isn't blue.
Yeah, coconut's not blue. That's like blue raspberry.
No, coconut. Blue candy tasting of coconut is like a common. It is a common motif in the candy. Like go look up like a Sonic coconut, whatever it's called. Sonic coconut blue dot organization. Type that into DuckDuckGo. Sonic blue coconut nutrition facts. Wacky pack blue coconut serving size 9 grams.
Yeah, but that's a wacky
Medium blue
pack.
coconut
That's not
serving
normal.
size 18 grams. No, blue is like blue for coconut is like a thing. Blue coconut slush float or blended float drink. Foodfacts.com/CI/nutrition facts/frozen favorites dessert/Sonic Reg Blue.
So I wonder if part of your barber training is how to keep people from AJ from drinking your sanitizing fluid.
424 calories per serving. How can you afford not to drink one?
It's true.
So this is kind of I had this thought earlier when I was looking at the Microsoft case of the two main functions of a sovereign, or like the two big roles that government plays. And on the one side, you've got the government collects taxes and you pay into the collective kitty, and then you spend that on nice things, and then we can have nice things like education and roads and pretty fountains and Hoover Dam. And then on the other side, you've got the law and order, and you've got like the hammer in the criminal law that's a blunt instrument that comes down on people for doing things that are wrong. And I feel like licensure is a good example of sort of the intersection of both, right? Because on the nice collective kitty side of licensure, what you're paying for is a body of people who are going to certify someone and say, hey, this person's pretty good at their job. You know, you're better off putting your faith in this person than some rando that you meet on the street who says, sure, I'll cut your hair for $10. And then you've also got on the law and order side, if you cut hair for $10 without that license, then they'll sort of come down on you. And so that's kind of an interest, like a lot of things are one or the other. And as someone who's politically liberal, I really like the idea of a kitty, and I'm not quite so into the heavy-handed law and order other than sort of general regulations for the collective good, right? Like the government using its power against people who also have power and want to use it to, you know, poison my water.
Like barbers?
Oh, imagine if you could replace your whole like septic and well system with just like sonic blue coconut.
But then you'd be dumping all your waste products into delicious coconut water.
Yeah, but just pump that straight back out. What do you think the water company does in your city?
It would smell really nice, though.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Wait, one of the things I heard Laura say was that she was thinking about the Microsoft case,
which we discussed on episode 51.
Yeah, so the U.S. versus Microsoft. So the U.S. wants Microsoft to produce records that it maintains in Ireland, and Microsoft says, no, like our dial-up's not fast enough for us to be able to download the information you want. And there's been a development. There's been a big development in the meantime that we should talk about with urgency, which is that the U.S. passed a law.
Oh, yeah.
Which doesn't happen very often. Has anybody read it? I think I read it.
I haven't.
So basically, the one of the things that was in the omnibus bill was something called the Cloud Act, the Clarifying Lawful Overseas Use of Data Act. And the law states a provider of electronic communication service or remote computing service shall comply with obligations to provide, or of the obligations of this chapter to preserve, backup, or disclose the contents of a wire or electronic communication and any record of other information pertaining to a customer or subscriber within such provider's possession, custody, or control, regardless of whether such communication record or other information is located within or outside of the United States. So that seems like it's like dispositive of the Microsoft case. Like Microsoft is like, oh, we don't have to produce things in Ireland. And it turns out that the government passed a law that says that Microsoft does have to produce emails that it stores in Ireland.
I mean,
so what am I missing?
I think there's a lot of precedent too for the idea that domestic corporations who have business dealings abroad still have to comply with U.S. law. I mean, if you look at like international banks, you know, you've got like the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act dictates the way an American bank can behave if it's doing business in Singapore. So, you know, I like that's a fairly innocuous law to pass, right? I think the mind-blowing part of the law is the idea that the U.S. government has reserved the right to cull from a private corporation that's got your email, all of your data, right? But that wasn't even the issue of the case.
Yeah, so I mean, this is going to be weird for a liberal person to say. I actually don't have a problem conceptually with the government having the power to like use a warrant to obtain records that a communication service provider has, right? Like, you know, like ostensibly they're
still
like,
a meaningful process for having to obtain a warrant, as though you can't just walk in and hand it to a judge and they'll just sign it.
So like if you have a warrant and you know there's like probable cause and whatever to obtain these records, it seems perfectly reasonable to me that the U.S. wouldn't distinguish between like communications records that are stored in the U.S. and that are stored in Ireland, as long as U.S. persons in the personal jurisdiction of the court have the ability to to obtain the records and hand them over, right? Like, so like, I think that sort of mass surveillance and, indiscriminate.
Well, let me ask you this. Should foreign countries have the power to obtain your records using their process?
Yeah.
Even though you've never touched foot in that country?
Yeah. So one of the interesting things in the Cloud Act is that like other countries providers have to follow other countries' production laws as long as they, meet certain standards. The president has to like execute some sort of executive agreement with them, and they have to like have certain like standards with respect to their like justice system.
Were they trying to get the data of an Irish citizen or the data of an American citizen that just so happened to be stored in Ireland?
An American.
That's a pretty big change.
Yeah, but I mean is that not what the law allows you to do?
Yeah.
Right? Like if the United States wanted, it could get information from Microsoft of a Irish national. Right.
So governments have like investigatory powers, right? Like you would, right? Like the people's objections to like what the NSA does isn't that the NSA like investigates people, right? The problem isn't like the NSA is like obtaining records about people and investigating their activities, right? The problem is that there's like mass surveillance going on, right? That they're indiscriminately collecting millions of records about people. If you just happen to have ever spoken in your life to a non-US person, then you suddenly have like records about yourself that are being scooped up. And then they say like, oh, like we store these databases and we don't search them, but they still like have it, right? Like they still collect records on like millions of US persons.
The issue is the process, right? The issue let's flip the tables back to my original hypothetical, right? Like the process, I mean, we're lucky that we have a warrant system, right? That no searches and seizures without reasonable protective measures, right? But another country doesn't have to have that system of investigating AJ Smullen. You know what I mean? And another country could have a simple process of an investigator deciding they want to look up AJ's personal details. And so
that's life.
Well, I don't know if the Cloud Act affects that, but so if we're talking about in terms of the cloud,
but
say
what
AJ's
I'm saying
an Irish citizen and he's got his data stored on the American cloud.
No. But it's analogous because if you're an Irish citizen, right, and you've got your data stored in Microsoft servers in Ireland, you're in essence a foreign country using their foreign laws. So
I guess the question is, in order to have probable cause to execute a warrant to require Microsoft, a domestic corporation, to produce documents, because this is a warrant, not a subpoena. In order to get a warrant to issue, do we know...
But it's not about probable cause or about the warrant requirement. It's about a foreign country's process.
A foreign country's process I can't have any say in. I can object to it all I want, but I'm talking about the American law. If in order to get probable cause for a warrant, my question is, do you have to have jurisdiction just over the possessor of the documents? Or if we're talking about a warrant rather than a subpoena, do you have to have personal jurisdiction over the person who you're issuing the warrant for, that citizen whose data you're trying to get? Because there's where your protection is for something like the Cloud Act. I can't speak for another country. It's in order to... Don't you need personal jurisdiction over the person whose data you're getting the warrant to collect?
I don't know.
I don't know either. I should have looked that up. I wasn't thinking about that.
Mm-hmm.
But so, I mean, the question for me, right, is because this seems like a fairly easy law for them to have drafted to sort of update a 1986 rule. Appealing something to the U.S. Supreme Court is not cheap, especially for the kinds of lawyers that you'd think Microsoft probably retained. And given how easy it was to get through a bill just making what is essentially a technical amendment to the rule, why did Microsoft want to fight this? What made it worth it to them to send really expensive lawyers to the Supreme Court? Like, who argued this for them?
I think they didn't have to comply.
Yeah. Microsoft was asked that very question in oral argument.
What did they say?
They said that the reason... Let me pull it up to make sure I have it right. But working from memory, what I remember them saying was basically that they handle a lot of data across a lot of countries, and if they don't have to produce it, then they shouldn't be required to.
Yeah, I mean, you could imagine it going the other way, right? Where, like, if there was some colorable argument why Microsoft didn't have to produce it, and then they chose to produce it anyway, like, that could really, like, damage the reputation, right? Like, as the whole thing with, like, Facebook and stuff right now is that, you know, preserving people's privacy is a real cachet in the market, right? Like, I think it's totally reasonable and probably worthwhile publicity for Microsoft to, like, go to these lengths to not produce something when they didn't actually have to. Although now it seems like they have to, and so that's it.
When we talk about foreign countries, too, they're caught between a rock and a hard place because Europe has much more stringent views of what privacy protections entail than the United States does. And Ireland's an EU country, so they could be running into trouble there.
Well, good. I hope it's difficult for a lot of people. So what do you want to talk about? What do you want to do? We got what are the topics? I emailed Laura a bunch of topics. Are any of these topics good? I had jury duty.
Did you? What happened?
I showed up and I signed in, and the judge came out and she said we had 10 trials scheduled for today, and they all settled, and we don't need any of you ever again. Go home.
That's good, right?
I guess. I mean, what would you do in my situation? I probably should have stood up and yelled guilty.
The closest I ever got was I was called to jury duty when I was clerking, and so for my occupation, I put down clerk.
What did they think you meant
me.
like store clerk?
I don't know.
Did you get impaneled?
No, I didn't. They struck me, I think, not for cause, but preemptorily. I guess they didn't like the way I looked.
The closest I came, I was pretty pregnant, and I asked the judge how long I'd have to be sitting if it was a 2-day trial. I was like, I think I can do it as long as there's enough breaks. And he's like, why don't you come back when you're not pregnant? So we didn't even get to the issue of, like, I'm a lawyer. He just took a look at me, and I walked up, you know, tell him, I can do it as long as we're not sitting too long. And he's like, yeah, no, go back to the jury room.
My wife was 8 months pregnant when she was impaneled on a homicide jury. She had told the judge, she said, I have to go. I have to go every 3 hours. You got to stop the trial. And the prosecutor and the defendant and the judge, like, all talked for a minute, and then they came back and said, it's worth it. We want you on the jury that badly.
Wow.
Every 3 hours is not an unreasonable ask in terms of just
every 3 hours is totally doable, but I would be more concerned if it's like a 2-week homicide.
Like, that's not...
They must have been hard up. Was it a death case? Death penalty case?
No. I mean, it was one of the it wasn't murder. It was one of the, like, lower mens rea homicides. It was like reckless something to an elderly person or something. It was basically assault. He basically got charged with assault, but the victim did die. It's complicated. Texas it's basically the Wild West out here.
Was it felony murder?
No, it was a crime specifically relating to injuring an elderly person, but the elderly person did die, but it wasn't murder.
Huh.
But it was a homicide.
Nope, in Delaware they sent me away. Although I don't know if that applies to everyone who's pregnant, because I'm pregnant and diabetic, so there were sort of extra concerns. I
just saw a headline on the Washington Post website, and I'm gonna submit it to the two of y'all. Whether I should read this article. Here's the headline. Are you ready? It's by Christine Phillips. A Georgia city proclaimed April as Confederate History Month. Period. Next sentence. Then came the N-word.
Doesn't seem like it would both logically follow, but then what do I know?
The city could.
Did you link it?
What city?
In Georgia. Should I read this? A former elected official used the N-word several times.
I mean, don't read the N-word part.
Offending a black member of Georgia's City Board of Commissioners. Quote, I told you at the time that there were white folks, there were black folks when I was growing up. There was white trash, my family. There was N-word town. We live next to N-word town. You live next to what town? He asked Johnson. Johnson's matter-of-fact reply, N-word town, son. I'm telling you, son. Now, that changed. I'm no longer white trash. Mr. McCord, please get to the point so we can move on, Holberg said. This article's bad, I think. I think maybe Georgia shouldn't be in the news. There should be a moratorium on Georgia news. First, they had that Georgia 6 election, which turned out lame, and now it's this N-word business.
To be fair, you brought Georgia up in the news.
Yeah, I regret it. I was just clicking around. I wasn't paying attention to what I was doing.
It's okay.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, here are the two things I want to ask Laura about. Three things. First, does anyone know who Laura is? Can anyone introduce Laura? Laura's been on the show before.
Hello. I know who Laura is.
She's been on the show before. Anyone who's listened to every single episode of the show will have heard an episode with Laura in it.
I'm an attorney in Wilmington, Delaware. I serve on the board of directors for the American Mock Trial Association. I was just... I'm going to be recommended to go from candidate member to full member at the next board meeting. And I also serve on the board of directors of Planned Parenthood of Delaware. I coach the mock trial team at the University of Delaware. What else do I do? I do too many things. I teach the evidence court portion of the bar exam for the Delaware bar. That lecture is coming up in May.
Wait, that's cool. How do you...
I do cool things.
Wait, hold on. During any of the time when you were a candidate member of the Delaware Planned Parenthood board, did anyone ever joke that you were like the Manchurian candidate board member?
No, I went straight to full membership for the Planned Parenthood board, but the AMTA board has a 2-year candidacy period for everyone. So I just finished my 2-year candidacy period.
I got the board wrong.
And they're recommending me up.
All right. Hold on. I was going to ask you something very important.
Okay.
All right, get ready. Do you know who... Okay, wait. So do you know who else who's probably the most famous... Wait. No, you said... Oh, no.
What is going on?
Prescott Bush was on the board of Planned Parenthood, Connecticut, not Delaware.
Oh, was he really?
Yeah.
Were you trying to make a joke?
I was trying to get Prescott Bush in there. I ruined it. I can't edit this show because I'll have to listen to this again.
That was
Prescott Bush was the treasurer of Planned Parenthood, Connecticut.
Huh.
Well, someone had to do it.
Planned Parenthood Delaware, the local ones that are responsible for administering care are all separate. So there's the national that does the lobbying and the policy stuff, and that's Planned Parenthood for America. And then there's a local one in all the different states, and some of the states have two. Like, I think California might be northern and southern, or there's some areas where multiple states are combined into one. Delaware is all its own. We've got offices in Wilmington and Newark, and a couple downstate as well. I think Dover, and I want to say... Oh, I should know this. I think Georgetown or Rehoboth. But so I know we've got 4 offices statewide.
That's dope. So you like in there like administering the care to the low income women?
No, not me personally. on the board, we're we're supervising operations and voting on the direction it's going to go, and the CEO has to report to us every month, what her agenda is and where she's going with everything. And then generally a board of directorship for a nonprofit organization is the privilege of having the responsibility to try to bring in more contributions. That's a big part of what we do. Is, I mean, anytime you're administering care to low income people, you just hemorrhage money on doing that, right? Like this is not a profit making venture. This is a service work, and so hemorrhage is the wrong word. But you don't make money off of what we do, and that's why it's so important that we have support of people who believe in the mission. And that's a big part of what the board of directors does, is keeps the mission on track and goes around and finds people who support the mission and find out what supporters of the mission are hoping that we're doing and try to do that.
Cool. It must be nice to live in a state where like Planned Parenthood doesn't get kicked off its like Medicaid contract and stuff. That's pretty cool.
I should say, too, I'm not speaking like as an authorized representative of Planned Parenthood of Delaware Board of Directors. These are all my personal opinions.
That's okay. I mean, we'll impute them onto the organization.
So Prescott Bush, the only evidence of Prescott Bush's relationship was a letter that Margaret Sanger sent him.
Prescott Bush was definitely a treasurer on the board of Planned Parenthood Connecticut, and I know this because it was in the H.W. Bush biography by Meacham.
Oh, I'm reading a Snopes article.
No, it was in the Meacham biography.
So?
No. The Snopes article is that he was a Planned Parenthood founder.
No, the Smoking Gun said that that he was listed as treasurer of the organization on the letterhead, right? He was listed as treasurer of the Planned Parenthood Federation of America.
He was the first national. He was treasurer of the first national campaign. No, he was. It's in the Meacham biography. I wouldn't make this up. Why would I make this up?
So. I don't know, man. You got it out for the Bushes.
Yeah, well, they had that one terrible president, but their other guy was on the Planned Parenthood board.
But he wasn't president.
Prescott wasn't president.
No, but the other ones were president.
George P. wasn't. Jeb wasn't.
No, look.
Barbara wasn't.
Yeah.
In 1947, Prescott Bush served as treasurer of the group's first national fundraising campaign, a move he would soon come to regret.
Why did he regret it?
I don't know. Because, I don't know, he was a Republican.
Well, I mean, back when Planned Parenthood was getting started, the Republicans had launched this sort of concerted effort to attack abortion rights. That was sort of a contrived Republican creation in the middle of the 20th century as a way to kind of solidify the South and the religious vote. And so they were looking for some issue that they could use politically. And so, at the time he joined up, something like patient care wasn't really a political controversy. It's patient care. And so I think he probably regretted it after they launched into that strategy.
I don't know. Hold on. But so Prescott Bush, is there like another Bush? Are there any more Bushes? There's Billy Bush. What does Billy Bush have to do with Planned Parenthood?
Isn't Prescott the grandpa of George W.?
Yeah, Prescott is George W. Bush's grandfather.
He's the CIA guy.
No, HW is the CIA guy. So the CIA thing is actually interesting. At least in the Meacham biography, the Meacham makes it sound like Rumsfeld didn't like Bush, and it was like Rumsfeld who organized Bush getting appointed to the CIA to get him away from politics, right? Because he was appointed to the CIA after he was the RNC chair, I think. But they were Rumsfeld was I don't want Prescott Bush involved in politics anymore, or H.W. Bush in politics anymore. So he moved him to the CIA, where he would be cloistered away from, I guess, other stuff. But then later he was president.
Did it work?
Yeah, I don't know. He was head of the RNC. What are the other RNC heads that are worth mentioning in your life? Who else has ever been head of the RNC and you've been oh, I want to talk about that person?
Priebus.
He has a prehensile Priebus. Where are we going with this? Tom, what do you want to talk about?
We can talk about Michael Steele.
He was head of the RNC.
Yeah. So there's that. If you guys want, we can skip directly to Supreme Court predictions.
Yeah, let's do Supreme Court predictions.
Oh, Laura might not be on the call again.
I'm here.
Oh, she is here.
Yay.
Mostly. Okay, so Laura, you know the general gist of Supreme Court predictions?
Yes.
Okay.
But I don't know what cases they've heard other than we've got a prediction that Microsoft is going to go away. Didn't they just drop it?
Well, we've already done Microsoft. So I've got two cases, and I'll briefly describe them. And we'll make predictions as to the result, how many votes and which side will win. Okay? So since we're talking about Planned Parenthood, let's start with National Institute of Family and Life Advocates v. Becerra. And so in this case, basically, California passed a law to address pregnancy crisis pregnancy centers. Have you guys heard about this?
Yeah.
These are, I guess, clinics that oppose abortion, usually are sort of Christian nonprofits. California legislature believed that they were posing as medical clinics and providing inaccurate information to women about their abortion rights. And so California passed a law that required them to do various things, including post notices about the availability of abortion services and a state number where women can get more information. The issue presented in this case is whether this is a violation of the crisis pregnancy center's First Amendment rights as applied to states via the 14th Amendment.
It's not.
Well, that was quick.
Well, this is a private organization, right? So the question is whether shutting them down is a violation of their rights?
No one's being shut down. So these crisis pregnancy centers have to post notices saying, hey, we don't provide abortion. If you want an abortion, call this number. And the question is whether that's a violation, whether that's compelled speech, whether that's a violation of the crisis pregnancy center's First Amendment rights.
Well, I suppose it partially depends on how they're holding themselves out, because I also understood that they're holding themselves out as medical clinics. Like someone will come in wearing a white lab coat and holding a clipboard with a stethoscope around their neck. Someone who possibly has no medical training whatsoever, but I'm sure it varies from center to center, but that's...
Yeah. That's what California was arguing, that look, a lot of these centers put on their advertisements, and while they don't outright come out and say that they're, medical clinics, they will have people wearing scrubs, for example, and looking very like holding a clipboard and looking very medically. You know what I mean?
This is like an easy case. This is like an open and shut.
Yeah. So what do you think the prediction is going to be?
The government, it's not a First Amendment violation when the government makes you display its message in a shop window. Right. I mean, there's a rational basis for it. No, I think this is like a really easy open and shut case. I think it's like 6-3 for California. I think the dissenters are Thomas and Gorsuch and Alito.
Laura?
Yeah, I agree. I think unless they're prepared to say the Surgeon General's warning on a pack of cigarettes is compelled speech, if California has decided that this is a threat to public health, and so if you're going to hold yourself out as a certain kind of business, as a pregnancy crisis center, what's interesting to me is I feel like generally people know where they need to go in order to get abortion services. I hope that we've gotten the word out about Planned Parenthood and people know where that's available. From what I've heard, people who go to those pregnancy crisis centers, what the main thing they're looking for is that they don't get?
Abortions?
Diapers.
It would be nice if they provided diapers.
I mean, if they want to set up distribution centers to hand out diapers and formula, I'm all for it. Go for it. Call yourself a pregnancy crisis center and hand out diapers and formula. People could really use that as opposed to just propaganda.
So what's your prediction?
I agree. I think 6-3 upholds for California. You just get kind of ideological splits. I think they'll question the factual idea that they're holding themselves out as medical clinics.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think I agree that it's going to be an ideological split, but I think the ideology is not what you guys think is on the court. I think the ideology goes the other way. I think it's going to be 5-4 for the crisis centers.
I don't think you think that.
I think that's what the result is going to be. Yeah.
How come? What's the wrinkle in this case? What am I missing?
No, I don't. There is no wrinkle. I think that what's his face, Kennedy, is going to swing with the conservatives on this one. I think he's going to say, there's no rational, California isn't being rational when they're requiring these people to speak against their, deeply held beliefs that abortion is bad. I think that's basically what the opinion's going to read. Something to that effect.
You think this is going to be another Hobby Lobby?
No, I think that would be a huge reversal, right? That would be a huge reversal. That would be a huge reversal of the First Amendment precedent with respect to like corporate speech, right? Like there are all sorts of like corporate speech restrictions on like corporate advertising that wouldn't apply to individual speech, but in particular, it's like well accepted that the government can make you display its message in your shop window, right? Like there's like an OSHA warning in like my office work break room, right? I mean, so the like it's not a strict scrutiny thing, right? It's a rational basis thing. Like is there a rational basis for people to find? Is there a rational basis?
But I don't think that's how the court is going to analyze it.
Well, but that would be a huge departure from the court speech precedent. I mean, that would be like even for this court, it would be surprising.
Yeah, but Hobby Lobby was a pretty huge departure. The idea that a corporation can have a religion. I mean, they could even use the Hobby Lobby principle if they really were determined.
But I mean, even if you challenged it under RFRA, which Tom said they hadn't, but even if you like did apply the Religious Freedom Restoration Act rationale, right? So like first of all, RFRA can't be applied to the states, and it's a California regulation. So Hobby Lobby is inapt anyway. But second of all,
I don't think that's the analogy that's being drawn, right, Laura? Well, you tell me, Laura.
Well, so I mean, you know, coming from Delaware, the Supreme Court got the idea of forwards and backwards lifting the corporate veil pretty bizarrely wrong. And I was clerking for the Court of Chancery at the time that opinion came out, and I was meeting up with some of the Delaware Supreme Court clerks trying to make any sense of what they were saying about, you know, the way corporations work, and we were wondering what Corporations 101 class their clerks took to get them there. You know, it certainly wasn't Delaware corporations, but you know, so the idea that a corporation can have thoughts and feelings and worship and a religion, and so if you're saying that a corporation is someone who can have a religion, can you compel that? Is it constitutional for a state, not under RFRA, but under the First Amendment, to compel that, you know, could you require a Catholic church to put a sign on the door that says, here's where you get an abortion? Obviously not, right?
That wouldn't pass rational basis. That would be the problem there.
It wouldn't pass rational. Well, I don't know. Rational basis would be that we know that people are that the Catholic priest is saying things about abortion in there, and so if we think that, you know, that's going to cause members of his congregation to wonder if they can get one or not, we want to make sure that they know that they can. You know, but I mean, rational basis aside, I don't think you'd even get there, because it would be a religious violation, let alone any sort of speech issue, right? And so you would think that a craft store or a pregnancy crisis center that's essentially masquerading as a medical clinic when it's not, would not be pseudo churches. But I mean, after Hobby Lobby, can a private corporation be like a quasi mini church that has religious belief? Apparently, I guess. And so, you know, would a pregnancy crisis center be granted that same sort of status? And so they would be exempted from compliance with otherwise, you know, rational laws. If you know, but I don't know if they've made that argument, because I feel like that argument seems to be a winner with this court.
I liked it better when Laura agreed with me.
No, I mean, I still think it's the kind of thing that should be upheld, unless there's a serious factual dispute about what kind of place this is. You know, my understanding is that they hold themselves out to be sort of medical. Not really. They come in with a lab coat and a stethoscope.
You want to do one more prediction, Laura?
Sure.
Okay, next one is Sveen v. Melin. And the issue here is about the contracts clause of the Constitution. You know, the question is whether Minnesota law that revokes a spouse's designation of a life insurance beneficiary upon designation, does that violate the contracts clause of the Constitution? And so for some background for our listeners, Mark Sveen and Kay Melin were married in 1997. Sveen had a life insurance policy that made Melin the beneficiary, with children as contingent beneficiaries. The couple divorced in 2007, and Sveen died in 2011. Mark never changed his beneficiaries, so when he died, his beneficiaries on his life insurance policy read that it should go to his wife and his ex-wife, now ex-wife, and if she's not alive, it should go to the children. And so the question is, does his life insurance go to his ex-wife or his children? So if you look at the life insurance designation, it would go to the ex-wife. But Minnesota has that law that says, look, if you divorce, then automatically these life insurance clauses are revoked, basically. And so under the law, it would go to the ex-wife, right? Under the Minnesota law. But the Contracts Clause of the U.S. Constitution says no state shall pass any law impairing the obligation of contracts. The district court held that the Minnesota law applies and the children should get the life insurance policies. The Eighth Circuit reversed, holding Minnesota violates the Contracts Clause because it retroactively applies to this contract that was made before it was passed. And so the question is entirely about whether this law violates the Contracts Clause of the Constitution.
It does.
You think it does?
Yeah.
Why?
Because there was a contract. There's a contract. And then the state said, no, we'll just do a different thing instead of the contract.
What's the public policy reason for the state of Minnesota saying you can't have a life insurance policy go to your ex-spouse?
Well, like most people, when they divorce, they don't want their life insurance policies to go to their ex-wives, or vice versa.
So it's assuming sort of contractual intent that the only reason you didn't make that change is because you forgot to.
Yeah, basically. Well, and I don't know if assumption is quite the right word, because in oral arguments they had a little discussion about this, and I vaguely remember that that they had some sort of legislative finding or something like that most people want their life insurance, those types of policies, automatically revoked upon divorce.
So the public policy reason is that they're trying to exact what they understand to be the will of the people. Is that they want, like, people assume that happens and would be surprised
if it didn't happen. Yeah.
So the most surprising things in the Constitution have a void for public policy exception, including full faith and credit, which was an issue before equal marriage was passed, giving full faith and credit to things like the marriage licenses of other states. And that actually dates back to a super old, obscure case where I think in New Jersey you were... I hope I'm not switching these, but I mean, this was, a century and a half ago. This was a while ago. In New Jersey, you weren't allowed to marry your niece, and in New York, you were. And so somebody took his niece to New York and married her and brought her back. And New Jersey said, no, we won't recognize that. That's gross. And the Supreme Court agreed, and they said, if you've got a strong public policy interest, we'll look the other way on the whole full faith and credit thing. And so, this strikes me as the kind of thing where, okay, there's the Contracts Clause, but, there are certain contracts that the government wouldn't make a state enforce. What if there was a contract for something that the state found abhorrent, like a contract for selling your child into slavery or something, and the state interfered with that contract? So a state can certainly say a contract's void. I guess the issue here is that they're saying it's ex post. But if Minnesota has a strong public policy interest in making sure that life insurance policies don't go to ex-spouses on accident, they might.
Yeah. Well, and part of the reason why this case has sort of had a resurgence, or the Contracts Clause itself has had a resurgence, is, historically speaking, the Contracts Clause was not used to invalidate a lot of laws as of the Great Depression. Like the last big case on the contracts clause, I'm talking like seminal case on the contracts clause arises out of the Great Depression, where a Minnesota law extending time to mortgagors to redeem their mortgages from foreclosure was held to not to violate the clause, right? And that's sort of like the switch in thinking of the contracts clause, where prior to that you had sort of, for lack of a better description, Lochner-esque type handling of the contracts clause. In recent times, particularly from sort of like the Chicago School of Economics thought, and by recent I mean the last like couple of decades, there's been a sort of a resurgence that and criticizing cases like this that say, like you're departing from the text of the Constitution, right? Like the text of the Constitution is pretty clear. No state shall pass any law impairing the obligation of contracts, period.
So we just do away with unconscionability doctrine. We just do away with all of the contract interpretation rules that can invalidate a contract.
Those are in. I'm sure that folks on the other side, would tell you. That those are sort of in sort of prospective, right? Like not retrospective.
So for the listeners who aren't lawyers, unconscionability doctrine, it basically says even if two people signed a contract, it could be so completely unfair to one of those two people that it shocks the conscience. It's unconscionable. And I think an example of the time that unconscionability doctrine has been applied is there was a sort of predatory lender that allowed people lease to own like furniture and television. Mm-hmm. But if you purchased a new one, then all of your furniture went back on the lien, even if what you owe is $1 each on each of the pieces of furniture. They reserved the right, if you were $45 behind in payment, instead of repossessing $45 worth of furniture, they'd repossess everything in your house that you'd gotten from them on this plan. And the court ruled that was unconscionable. And so
but the theory behind that is that, look, the unconscionability doctrine was a part of common law, and you knew that, or you should have known, or we're going to impute the knowledge to you when you entered the contract. It's not like, after the fact, we're creating a new law, or legislature's passing a new law and saying, you know what, all these contracts that you entered into, we're going to have this new law that says they're no good.
No, I just think that if you don't change your beneficiary, then the beneficiary, I think you guys are making it much more complicated.
Yeah?
Yeah.
How so?
The beneficiary shouldn't change.
If you don't change it?
Yeah.
But there's a Minnesota law that says it does change.
No, but what about the obligation of contracts that they can't be impaired?
I think it works the other way, because I get life insurance. I don't know if I have it at my current law firm. I don't keep track of it. I had it at my old law firm, and we got it automatically. And I think I named one of my parents as a beneficiary, but they noted, and I guess it said so in the policy, but they noted if you get married, the beneficiary automatically becomes your spouse.
That's crazy. There's no reason for this. No, it's just there's no public policy reason for this. They're just impairing the obligation of a contract.
So AJ, what's your prediction?
My prediction is 5-4 for Minnesota.
Laura?
I think it's going to be. It might be 8-1 or 9-0 for Minnesota. I don't think they're going to invalidate a Minnesota law over a technical reading of a life insurance contract.
Oh,
I think they're going to say public policy.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, me too. I thought you guys were going the other way. Right, that Laura was going the other way, but
I think the state's going to win. Isn't that what you said, AJ? Is that the state's going to win?
Yeah, I said Minnesota's going to win.
Yeah.
Yeah, is it Minnesota the one who wants to uphold its law?
Yes.
You think that, but Minnesota's weird. Their Democratic Party isn't even called the Democratic Party.
What's it called?
It's the Democratic Farmer Labor Party.
I lived there. I voted for Kucinich in my caucus.
Whoa. Wait, Kucinich he's going to run for governor of Ohio, maybe.
Yay.
Wouldn't it be weird if he was governor of Ohio?
I mean, it'd be an interesting mini experiment, you know, to see how having a sort of like liberal socialist in an executive position, I think it makes people nervous. They're like, he's just going to start handing out candy on the streets, and I don't think that's accurate. So it would be a good sort of experiment to see the plausibility of some of the proposals you're hearing coming out of the left.
All right. What do you want to do? You want to do sidebars?
We can if that's what you want to do. But we don't have to.
I have a sidebar. Do I have a sidebar?
What's your sidebar?
I have like a Google Doc full of sidebars. Oh, this is interesting. Oh, my sidebar is the best. You guys should also use my sidebar when I'm done with it. So this is from utoday.nl. So something from the Netherlands. I hope this is real news and not fake news. The texture of your cup or other tableware affects the taste of what you are drinking or eating. So researchers at Thomas Van Rompuy did an experiment where they used 3D printing to make all these different cups, and they had like this one cup with a very like sort of like corrugated angular surface, and they have another cup that's like very smooth. And even if you're eating the same thing out of either cup, you perceive that the thing in the smoother cup is sweeter. There's a paper. It's called, quote, "See Me, Feel Me, Effects of 3D Printed Surface Patterns on Beverage Evaluation." This is cool, right? But here's the crazy thing. It's also like the outside surface, like the surface that's touching your hand that matters. It's not like, this I cut my lip. I cut my lip on the sharp glass. It's like, oh no, but like just like the shape of the bottle. You just like things that come from a smooth jar you perceive as sweeter. Isn't it? No, that's interesting.
Sure. Yes. You say so.
Laura, it's your turn to tell me that this is interesting.
Well, I sort of spaced out thinking about those big white solid coffee mugs that you get at like a diner. And like when you get that diner coffee in that big solid mug, it seems so different from the coffee you get in like the delicate little teacups if you go to a fancy buffet. And I was trying to decide which one I like better. Do I like my coffee better from a delicate teacup or just a big hearty mug? And I think the answer might be the mug.
The mug. Of course the mug.
And it's warm and you wrap your hands around it and it's delicious.
Every morning I make myself a pour over in my Chemex, and I have a Life Factory glass travel mug. It's glass. It's like, it's got like a silicone sleeve on the outside for insulation.
No, I use my Star Wars mug or my WHYY mug for public radio.
That makes sense. Tom, tell me about some of your mugs.
Well, I can tell you about 12 flasks. Would you like to hear about 12 flasks?
Yeah.
My sidebar is about a individual named Richard Lenski. He did this now famous 12 flask experiment where he and a team of lab technicians started with 12 flasks of bacteria and have been separating them and growing these bacteria over 68,000 generations. And it's interesting because you're literally seeing evolution in action. Like they are, they're literally observing evolution works, how it is, how species diverge and become new species and how they evolve over time. So it's cool.
Huh. I don't know if I believe in evolution. Laura, what do you got?
Well, I just wanted to put in another plug for Planned Parenthood because I want to remind people that there's two important things that your Planned Parenthood does. One, Planned Parenthood for America does the lobbying and policy issues, and so if what really gets you going is, and maybe that's what it is if you're listening to this podcast, is the national policy stuff and the Supreme Court and the people trying to make changes to the laws and the bills, then make your contributions to Planned Parenthood for America. If you want to make a tax-deductible contribution that goes directly to patient care, I know in Planned Parenthood of Delaware we're doing great things distributing birth control long-lasting birth control. We've really reduced the unwanted pregnancy rate, which is a big factor in reducing the number of pregnancies that end in abortion or in other bad outcomes like pregnancy for people who are struggling with addiction or other issues. So we've really reduced the unwanted pregnancy rate. If what you want is to, on a very local level, help the people in your community with their care, that's where your contributions go. So it's not a sidebar, but I definitely wanted to make a little plug for the important work that we're doing.
That's a sidebar. That's a good sidebar. I think Planned Parenthood for America is a good sidebar, and also the C3, like the caregiving organization. But the C4, man, super into that.
Yeah, I mean, C4 is like the exciting, sexy stuff with the marches and the signs
and the pink hats.
And the pink hats. Well, I don't know. There's a little bit of a controversy over the pink hats. I'm in favor of wearing the pink hats if you're going to have a reproductive justice march. I think that they make a whole lot of sense for that. I think wearing the pink hats for something that is titled the Women's March is under-inclusive because it sort of equates what your genitals are with what your gender is, and that's just not necessary. So I like the pink hats, but I think they only address the narrow issue of, uterine-based reproduction, not defining what it is to be a woman. So, I mean, I like the pink hats, but in the right context. You don't want to be exclusive.
See, Tom, this is the intersectionality that Ruchit doesn't bring to the show.
What's that?
What Laura just said.
I think it's certainly possible, although I think it's probably hard just because we're not very good at it yet. I think you can have a trans-inclusive reproductive rights march, and I know certainly my local Planned Parenthood, we've been putting effort into making sure that trans men and trans women and non-binary people are also getting care, because Planned Parenthood is a place you go if you're worried you can't get care somewhere else. We've been working as an organization to make sure that, because we have services for cis women and cis men, and we offer STD testing and birth control conversations and education. We definitely have some trans youth on our youth advisory board, and we are working on trying to make sure that, whatever your situation is, if you come to us for care, we want to provide you with what you need. And so, I think you can have trans-inclusive reproductive health demonstrations, and I think you should. And I think that that's something that, how you do that is a work in progress. It's something we always have to ask ourselves, is this something we can be doing better?
Yeah. I mean, that's accurate. I mean, I think the very short version of that is that trans people have reproductive health issues too.
Who knew?
I did. I'm very intersectional.
And so they, it's a clinic. If you come to us for care, we better be ready to give it, right? The people who wear lab coats at Planned Parenthood, actually, need to wear, in scrubs, actual medical people.
Ugh. Don't like those. I'm a lawyer. I have an idea for the end of the show, for the last segment.
What's that?
We do a block after the sidebars.
What's that?
I want to know more about this Dungeons and Dragons game that Laura plays with her family.
We've got 2 campaigns going now.
You have 2 campaigns? Are you a wizard?
I am a wizard in the second campaign.
Wait, really?
Yes, I just started playing a wizard recently in the second campaign.
Oh, that's great. Whenever I play Dungeons and Dragons, I play a wizard named Ari, and then people have to say, "You're a wizard, Ari." Expelliarmus. The power of all you need is love.
No, I'm a wizard named Annika, who's a blatant knockoff of 7 of 9 from Voyager.
That's awesome.
But she's coming at it from the opposite angle, because she lived in a remote tribe of elves who were seeking perfection, but they pursued perfection through uniformity, and they were all almost entirely wiped out except for her when in this universe we're battling a fire elemental. we're like the last remnants of survival. It's a grim campaign. My husband's got a dark imagination. Her tribe was called the Collective.
This is cool. So you're a wizard. You get to which version are you playing?
5e.
Oh, that one's okay. I actually don't know what the versions do. I don't know why I asked. There's a follow up question to that. One of the versions is I mean,
5e is the current one. So if you want to start playing D&D and you're hoping that new books and new modules and things are going to be published for you to look forward to, or if you possibly want to drop in on like a convention or something, 5e is what's current, and so that's what they're playing. I think 5e's been a big hit. It's been really popular.
Is 5 the one where they like really scaled back the mechanics?
I don't know about really scaled back the mechanics. That might be 4. But before 5e, 3.5 was everyone's favorite, and 2 is considered sort of advanced D&D, where it's like just all rules all the time. 5e definitely leaves a lot more room for sort of, like DM fiat, which people don't like if they view it as a game of you versus the DM. That's not really what it's supposed to be, right? You're all building a story together. It's an improv game. It's not a video game with words. And so, to the extent you're all building a story together, it gives you the tools to do that using, some dice and rules, but the rules are kind of guidelines. If the story and the rules aren't meshing well, then, you have the option to pick story.
This is dope. So you play over Skype? How often do you every week?
Yeah, we have the main campaign where I play a half-orc cleric is every week at Sunday nights. And then the new campaign is every other Monday.
That's wild.
And so, yeah, I've spent a lot of time playing D&D considering how, I'm a lawyer with a child who serves on 2 boards of directors. I don't have time to do this, but it's really fun.
Man.
But I mean, it's improv, right? So, mock trial is basically law LARPing. And so, this is just sort of the natural next step.
Man. Tom, do you think you would make a good wizard?
Probably not.
How come?
I've never played D&D or really... I was never big into the video games or anything like that.
No, I know, but you were into mock trial, Tom. You would be a bard. A bard is someone who derives their power from the power of words or song. And so...
That sounds like the opposite of me.
What are you talking about?
Do I look like I sing?
You don't derive your power from charisma? You're not a charisma-based person?
Tom is somewhat charismatic at best. I wouldn't say he's very charismatic.
If we were to stat out Tom as a real human being, you'd have to make charisma his main stat, right? Or would you want to make intelligence your main stat? I think I think all mock trial people like you and me, we have.
What are my
charisma.
options?
Can litigating be one of your stats?
Litigating would definitely be a charisma check. But you could have expertise in litigating, and you'd add your charisma modifier plus your expertise bonus.
I'm reading the Wikipedia page on D&D attributes.
So there's charisma, and then there's intelligence, which is book smarts, and wisdom, which is empathy and street smarts. I don't think any of us is wisdom.
Ooh, constitution. That's what I want.
That's the ability to take a punch.
It says here, according to Wikipedia, a measure of how sturdy your character is.
This is dope. I wish I played Dungeons and Dragons on the phone with my family.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. We all have small children too, so we all try to get them in bed on time so that we can play the game. It's like a race. No, it's really fun. So the Annika character is a little bit more like who I am. She's smart, but she's got a -2 to strength. She's not very strong, and she's a little bit of a know-it-all. So it's a little bit risky to play someone who's actually more like you. The character I play in the other campaign is sort of who I wish I would be in an alternative universe. She's a half orc. She's nearly 7 feet tall. She has high constitution. And so I'm a 5'3" type 1 diabetic, and she is nearly 7 feet tall and can heal herself with magic. And she's not very bright. And so in a lot of ways she's like the opposite, but what a wish list. And her half-orc ability is if she gets struck down, instead of dying, she gets one more shot. She pops back up to 1 hit point. And so she can like rebound from near death once a day. And that's like the opposite of me. I'm really fragile. You could kill me by pushing the wrong buttons on my insulin pump, right? Like I am not a half-orc who has the ability to just rebound from death. So, it's fun. You can pretend, you can be someone you are, except more magical. You can be someone you're not. You role play as this character. You can come up with a funny voice if you want to. But so you don't learn how to play baseball by reading the rules of baseball, right? You learn to play baseball by watching a baseball game. The way that everyone learns to play D&D now, if they're sort of interested, is they watch this show called Critical Role on YouTube. Or I guess it's available on like Twitch stream, and it's these voice actors who put on a multi-year D&D campaign. They're on their second campaign. They're phenomenal. Like you can't hold yourself to the standard of professional voice actors in how you craft your character, but it's like watching professional baseball and then going out in the yard and throwing it around yourself. Right? You can't figure out how it's played by reading the book. You watch someone play it and you decide if that's your thing. It's a good show. It's really entertaining.
Tom, I love it.
Cool.
You can be a guest wizard on our campaign, Tom. Go figure out how
to become a wizard.
Laura, I really want to thank you for talking to me on Skype.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, guys, for inviting me back to the podcast. It's a good time.
It's fun.
Tom.
What's up?
How are you doing?
I'm good.
Good.
All right. Let's call it a day.
Bye, everyone.
See ya. Are you there?
Laura cut out. Tom, I think you're wrong.
I mean, I might be wrong. Yeah, sure. That's a reasonable opinion to hold.
You should get Richard to guess about this case offline, so we can still put it in the. So we can put his guess up on the website, heartlanded.com.
Yeah, I mean we can, or we can just put up Laura's guess
as Richard's guess.
No, as Laura's guess.
Oh,
she's her own person.
I'm eating matzah. It's the bread of affliction. What do you know about matzah?
Nothing. I've got another Supreme Court case.
Oh, yeah?
If Laura comes back.
I'm going to try adding her back to the Skype call. Wait, hold on. What do you know about matzah? It's the bread of affliction.
I don't know anything about matzah.
What? That's ignorant.
That is ignorant. That's literally the definition of ignorant.
Yeah. Why are you going to learn about my culture?
My internet cut out.